Hello everyone, welcome to episode 2 of our new show. The purpose of this show is to provide arguments meant to convince the followers of certain ideologies to support the development of male pleasure products. Specifically, our V simulator, an anatomically accurate half torso that heats and lubricates itself and is easy to clean, and our Pleasurebot design. These designs can be seen in the other videos on our channel, all links in the description. We are designing advanced male pleasure products, and our final objective is to design and release a Pleasurebot with advanced features because we think this technology is sorely needed and will alleviate many of the problems men face with regard to dating. If you support these ideas, like, comment, subscribe, share, bell, etc., etc. There is a double standard when it comes to the consumption and use of pleasure products. Often men who use or take interest in these products are seen as creepy or suspect. It is assumed that they have failed to attract a mate and are therefore lacking in some regard or lazy. A Pleasurebot or half torso is seen as a cheat code or shortcut to achieve a reward. Those who hold this view often look down on men who patronize pleasure workers as well. The image of a bearded man with shades, a trench coat, and a hat, walking out of an adult toy store with a brown paper bag, almost hiding his toy from public view, and shame comes to mind. Meanwhile, the opposite gender is often encouraged to make use of these devices, and it is not uncommon for them to have multiple toys of all kinds while in marriages or other relationships. It is seen as taking control of their sensuality, and the use of these devices is branded as empowering and liberating. In fact, go to any Walmart condom section and you will see toys designed for females openly marketed in plain view of any child that might happen to walk by. The same is said of mates who choose to provide adult services. There is a billion-dollar industry consisting of nothing other than females buying and using these toys on many publicly available websites. Certainly, no one ever claims that a female who has a pleasure product automatically hates men or is creepy or is a failure. The public does not perceive that perfectly normal, well-adjusted men in relationships could have legitimate uses for Pleasurebots or realistic pleasure products designed for men. And indeed, as we will see, Pleasurebots and toys made for men can be and are embraced by men's partners as well. Later on, we will discuss a few of those instances. The point here is that just because a man supports the development of Pleasurebots does not mean he hates women or wants to replace them. Pleasurebots are toys and will be used like any other toy already on the market, as an additional form of entertainment. In this episode, we will be exploring the reasons why those with a mainstream philosophy might consider supporting the development and use of Pleasurebots and advanced male pleasure products. These people are often referred to as normal or blue-pilled. First, let's define what we mean when we refer to mainstream dating philosophy. These ideas are the generally accepted concepts that are disseminated through media, TV, news, movies, schools, the workplace, policies, and polite society. While it may seem to those on the outside of the mainstream worldview that many of these ideas are contradictory, I assure you that many people who have these beliefs hold them in their heads simultaneously. The mainstream philosophy can be characterized by a series of duties men have that their mates do not, and a series of beliefs about relationship realities. Males and females are equal in all attributes, both physical and mental. There are no significant physical or mental differences between the genders that justify a difference in policy, accommodation, or treatment. Despite this reality, there are three main duties and expectations exclusive to men. First is the man's duty to please. It is a man's duty to please his mate both intimately and emotionally. Pills, pumps, creams, and other material aids exist to assist in this duty. The man is responsible for creating a sense of romance and an easier, more comfortable life. The man must also be emotionally pleasing in terms of his personality traits. He must be humorous but not a clown, sensitive but not emotional, vulnerable but not weak, malleable but not submissive, and be a leader but not controlling. It is the man's duty to figure out how to strike this balance. This duty is informally enforced through a feature of our culture. Baby boys have their members modified so that they are more aesthetically pleasing to mates, and so that the primary caregiver, usually the mother, doesn't have to bother cleaning certain natural excretions. Next is the duty to protect. Men everywhere and at all times are responsible for the safety and protection of females and children, whether they are known to him or not. Hitting a woman is always wrong in every circumstance, even in self-defense. This duty is expressed in the form of another feature of our culture known as white knighting, where it is expected and encouraged for a man to intervene to stop a female from being verbally or physically assaulted, regardless of context, risk, or circumstances. This duty is also codified into law in the form of the male-only draft, where men are expected to defend a society as a whole, regardless of stake, and it is the most obvious when it comes to war. We see this dynamic playing out in real time in the East. The next duty is the duty to provide and entertain. In addition to pleasure and protection, it is the main duty of every man to work and provide for his mate and society at large. Men have to do what needs to be done, no matter how dangerous or dirty or unpleasant, to make things work and to contribute to general funds. He must choose, plan, arrange for, and pay for interesting hobbies, travel, and events. He must focus on maximizing his income by pursuing a career and specialized skills. He must work as hard and as long as it takes to provide food, a house, and transportation. This duty to provide is clearest when it comes to family matters. It is codified into law through precedent with regard to child support, alimony, and abortion law. It is a man's duty to raise his partner's children, whether he wanted to be a father or not. Engaging in intimacy with a woman has the risk of pregnancy. If a pregnancy occurs, be this due to the act, or due to a lapse in birth control, or even if due to an intentional act of insemination after the fact, he must be held responsible for providing resources for the child. If the child is born and it is discovered that it belongs to another man, he should man up and take responsibility for the other man's child. If this man wants the child and his mate decides to terminate the child, there is nothing he can do because it is growing inside of her body, and therefore giving birth is her choice, and he should make peace with her decision. Providing resources, protection, pleasure, and entertainment for one's wife, girlfriend, or children is the number one priority in a man's life. These duties are just and should be embraced and celebrated as a man's special privilege and role in society. Of course, aside from these duties, to receive any benefit from committing these duties, a man has to attract a mate in the first place. Which brings us to the more general views of relationships held by the mainstream. Every person has a soulmate, referred to as the one, that is a perfect match, that they are meant to spend their entire lives with. Love, though often vaguely and loosely defined, is the object and purpose of all relationships. That is to say, couples date and marry each other primarily because they love one another, and all other considerations such as attractiveness, income, status, and utility are secondary or even tertiary. Relationships are not about physical intimacy, although they may have an unimportant and secondary intimate component. Marriage is a sacred union between two people. This lifelong monogamous arrangement is the gold standard of relationships, and marrying someone and raising children is seen as the ultimate goal of human life. The reason men are single is because they are not worthy of female attention. They should strive to improve themselves through physical training, education, and job advancement so that they can better perform their aforementioned duties. They should put themselves out there and approach women. However, they should also bear in mind that women are not coitus objects and should not be harassed, and thus should never approach a potential mate in public places, at work, or at the gym, regardless of her behavior or attire. A man who fails to heed these expectations will be subject to arrest or job termination or demonization. If a man fails to acquire a mate, it is because he is inadequate and thus unworthy. The human female has an innate and instinctual ability to sniff out good genetics and masculine traits. Because all potential mates have an almost supernatural ability to detect good traits in men, their choices are always optimal. These instincts are rarely mistaken, and sometimes the chosen man fails to satisfactorily perform his duties. In these rare instances, a mate should be able to divorce herself from the union for any reason or for no reason, without foregoing alimony or half the marital property, and should receive continued financial support. A man who is at a bar, in a club, or on a dating site who is not looking for a long-term relationship or marriage is dating for the wrong reasons. These men only care about one thing and will say or do anything to get it. Even at these venues, the mere presence of a potential mate should not be seen as an invitation to approach and thus harass. When a man buys food, clothing, housing, or transportation, or gives gifts or currency to a date, a girlfriend, or a wife, and directly engages in intimacy afterwards, he does so out of love, and this is a socially acceptable and expected norm. However, when a man gives currency or other things of value in exchange for or payment for intimacy with another consenting sober adult, this is when consent becomes toxic and in all cases is exploitive, regardless of the benefits both parties derive from the arrangement. So-called philosophies that claim to give insight into human dating, psychological or biological realities are thinly veiled doctrines of hate. They are nonsense, and the phrases, concepts, studies, examples, and statistics cited are mostly baseless, erroneous, and taken out of context or misinterpreted. Now that we have described the normal worldview, let's discuss why people with such beliefs would still benefit from the production of advanced male pleasure products like Pleasurebots. The first argument is an argument from proficiency. Insofar as it is a man's duty to please his mate, Pleasurebots would make men much better suited for the task. The act of coitus, like any other act, is one that requires practice. Like every other human activity, the more you do it, the better you become. Pleasurebots would be the ultimate tool with regard to training in this regard. Men who use Pleasurebots can improve their stamina and technique under circumstances where they are not cheating and thus maintain the integrity of the relationship. The more realistic the bot, the better his performance will be. This training tool would increase the overall satisfaction of both parties. Next, Pleasurebots and male pleasure toys can be used to supplement intimacy. Over time, the rate and desire for intimacy decreases between couples. This is a well-known and natural phenomenon. Being intimate with a man can feel like a chore for a mate, especially after children have been produced. In addition to this, there are conditions and diseases that may make intimacy painful or impossible. Just because a mate is not intimate with her partner, or vice versa, does not mean they do not love each other. However, a mate who understands that her man has needs and wants him to be happy could consent to the use of these devices as an alternative to her own intimacy, at least until her appetite for or ability to facilitate it comes back. Thus, these toys can act as a stand-in for intimacy until those issues are worked through, and act as a glue that keeps the couple together. This can be done while still maintaining the integrity of the relationship because neither party or partner is looking outside of the union for satisfaction. The presence of a pleasure bot or some other advanced male pleasure product in a marriage or relationship will reduce the frequency of performance and the pressure for performance by offloading the burden of satisfying a man. Another argument for supporting Pleasurebot development is an argument from variety. Contrary to those who think men would somehow replace their mates with robots, which would never happen, couples can embrace these technologies as simply another fun toy to interact with. Often toys like these are introduced into the bedroom to enhance or vary a couple's bedroom routines. With couples that have been together for a long time, these routines can become repetitive, and a Pleasurebot can add an interesting element to the normal activities. Pleasurebots, even ones that replicate female anatomy, can be programmed to please both males and females. A Pleasurebot can be embraced by a couple as an alternative to swinging or bringing in a third party without any of the biological or emotional risks. It does not take much imagination to realize that all kinds of fantasies and roleplay can be enjoyed with a non-judging, totally obedient robot partner that can look how you want and do what you want in total privacy. There is an additional argument that the existence of realistic Pleasurebots will lead to a higher quality dating pool for females. As you know, many men are on the dating scene to simply get laid, the so-called pump and dump culture. If these men had their lust satisfied by Pleasurebots, they wouldn't need to deceive potential mates about their intentions. Furthermore, those men who are not up to the general standards of mates would not be on the digital or physical dating scene, wasting the time of and harassing people they have no chance of getting with. Both the low-quality men and the men who only want their lust satisfied would be largely absent. The only men left, therefore, would be more serious-minded and of better quality. This would significantly lower unwanted attention and declutter dating venues, both digital and physical. Females may get less attention and have less options, but they will get less unwanted attention and have fewer bad options. Removing these bad actors from the dating scene would result in fewer unplanned pregnancies, lower rates of abuse, and lower instances of unwanted physical interaction. Related to this argument is an argument for self-improvement that benefits females in the long run. On your journey to make yourself the ideal provider, you can be distracted by your desire to find a partner. For a man to become worthy of his full potential, he must train physically, mentally, and gain skills useful for a career. If he spends time, energy, and resources pursuing a mate, he will often fail to reach the quality that his future wife deserves and demands. Thus, the Pleasurebot can act as an outlet for his lust by harmlessly diverting those energies and allowing him to focus on school, work, and physical fitness. This is the power of libido management, controlling a man's natural urges so that he can focus his energy on making himself a better provider. In the long term, everyone wins in this scenario because the man is satisfied and focused, and after his process of self-improvement has finished, his future mate will have a man who has a higher status. A derivative of this train of thought is an argument from improved decision-making. Much like a person who goes grocery shopping when they are hungry and ends up buying more food that is less nutritious, a man who goes onto the dating scene full of lust will make more rash decisions. He may pursue a mate who he might not otherwise pursue and ignore red flags he might otherwise not ignore. A man who is using a Pleasurebot to engage in libido management will have a clearer head and make more rational dating decisions, which will lead to a longer, happier, and healthier union. The next argument is an argument from nostalgia. There are circumstances in which couples may be apart for long periods of time. Sometimes old age or unfortunate events can claim one partner before another. Sometimes providing for the family requires a partner to travel or be stationed away. In the first case, pleasure bots made in the likeness of the lost partner can help ease the pain of said loss. And in the second case, a pleasure bot made in the likeness of the absent partner can serve as a surrogate for said partner so that neither party has the temptation to cheat while they are apart. The final argument we will discuss here is an argument from societal benefit. The large number of single and lonely men in this country have been characterized as dangerous by various media outlets. The narrative is that these men can become violent, more easily radicalized, and an attempt has been made to link them to mass shootings. This is a curious trend, since the business leaders, owners, politicians, judges, and civil servants who are responsible for creating and enforcing the current economic, foreign policy, and social circumstances typically have wives, mistresses, and have no problem getting embroiled in many cheating scandals. Furthermore, men in uniform are known to be prime bachelors, and the millions of men in prison do not seem to have difficulty having multiple children with multiple mates, and these two groups are pound for pound the most violent on the planet. Be that as it may, single men who struggle to engage in relationships are viewed with a dangerous suspicion. The imagery this conjures is that of a hairy, obese, unemployed, sedentary man who can barely get out of his chair, sitting in a dark room in his mother's basement, surrounded by empty Cheeto bags and paper plates stained with chicken tender grease, who spends his days playing video games, smoking weed, and pleasuring himself. The maximum amount of damage these men inflict is making impotent threats to public figures for which they are promptly arrested. Perhaps the fare is that these men will buy a white van and drive around schools with candy. This, of course, requires enough money for a van and a driver's license. If you really believe that these men constitute a threat to society, and some say the greatest threat to society, then you should be bending over backwards to fund pleasure bots or some other form of artificial intimacy solution. If these allegedly dangerous, violent, and destructive men are preoccupied by playing with waifu anime robots, they would have no time, energy, or desire to lash out at society. By extension, they would be engaging in significantly lower amount of predatory and antisocial behavior. This means a permanent reduction in the trafficking of people, including minors, lower instances of STD infection via prostitution, and less general harassment, which would result in safer neighborhoods, schools, public spaces, and children. This argument alone would be sufficient reason to support the development of these devices, as they would be a boon to mankind by neutralizing what is considered a social ill. We have gone over several reasons why even those who reject a critical view of relationships in the West would still benefit from the development of pleasure bots. Our company is positioned to bring these technologies into reality, with your help, of course. If you found any of these arguments convincing, I invite you to donate to us on our website and to sign up for our Kickstarter email list. All donations go directly to development and business expenses. All relevant links are in the description. Like, comment, and subscribe, and if you can't donate, at least give us a mention on other channels that produce Manosphere content. We would love to collaborate with other creators if possible. Thank you for your time and attention. Take care.